And I think it is just about time that we get started. Or we can start right now. Hey, welcome to At the Track Live. I am Coach James. I am the creator and the lead instructor for All About Aerodynamics. What is All About Aerodynamics, you ask? Even if you didn't ask, I'm going to tell you. All About Aerodynamics is a science program where I use Hot Wheels cars to teach kindergarten through 6th grade students about physics, about aerodynamics, about energy, about force, about kinetic energy, about potential energy, about elastic energy, about drag, about lift, about Isaac Newton and his 3 laws of motion, and a whole range of other science topics. And then once I've taught the students all about the science, then I bring in about 400 different Hot Wheels cars, and each student gets to pick a car that they think would be fastest in a series of races. They set up a 20-foot drag racing track, and we have a tournament, and they race the cars, and they observe how their cars performed. Did their car perform up to or below their expectations? And if they had the opportunity, would they select that car again, or would they make a different choice based on what they've observed? So we go through the scientific method, and we have a lot of fun. But before I can bring all the cars into the classroom for the students to use, I have to make sure that I know which cars I'm bringing in so I can keep account of them and make sure that I'm bringing back the same number of cars that I took into the class. And also, there's an online component of All About Aerodynamics. And because the students have to be able to select the cars without physically seeing the cars, I had to create a system and a way for them to be able to view the cars and select the cars virtually. So that meant I needed to take pictures and videos of each of the cars. And it's worked out fine because even though it's kind of boring work to just sit there and take a picture and a video of a Hot Wheels car, enter it into a spreadsheet, and then put in all the details that I have to add in, the name, the year, etc. It worked out because it led to the creation of All About Aerodynamics at the Track Live. And with At the Track Live, it gives me the opportunity to take some of the Hot Wheels cars I have in storage out of storage and bring them into the All About Aerodynamics at the Track Live fleet. And that fleet currently consists of 592 cars. We're moving closer to 600, which is crazy. But that's what's happening. So with At the Track Live, what I do is I go into storage, I pull out some of the Hot Wheels cars that I've purchased over the last couple of years, but haven't opened and cataloged, so therefore I can't bring them to the students. So each week I crack open about 6 cars and take a look at those, review those. I take the picture, I shoot the video, enter them into the spreadsheet, and then at the end of that process, take them out to the track. And we have a little mini tournament and determine which car of the new group is the fastest. Then the car that wins that gets to take on our fastest in fleet car. What is the fastest in fleet car? The fastest in fleet car is the car that is basically our champion and the car that has beaten the car that wins the mini tournament. So, for example, today I will introduce 6 cars. Of those 6 cars, once they have their little mini tournament, 1 car will emerge victorious. That car that emerges victorious will then take on our fastest in fleet car, which is currently this one, the Solar Reflex. The Solar Reflex last week defeated the BMW M3 GT2, which had been the champion for a good month and a half. And that car, the BMW, was a fast car, and I really wasn't expecting it to be beaten anytime soon. But sure enough, last week, even though we had an abbreviated show, we only introduced 2 cars, and one of those 2 cars was this one, the Solar Reflex. And it took, because our races are best 2 out of 3, it took all 3 races, but the Solar Reflex pulled it out in like right at the wire, and what was basically a photo finish. And if you want to see how that race went down, all you have to do is go to AtTheTrack.live, and you can select our YouTube link there. And all of the episodes of At The Track Live are listed. There are time codes, so if you just want to see the races, you can select that. If you want to see the reviews, you can select that. And if you want to watch the whole episode, you're more than welcome to do that. So all of the episodes are there, and you can see how the Solar Reflex became our fastest in fleet car and the All About Aerodynamics current champion. But wait, there's more. If you go to AtTheTrack.live, you will see 3 options. There is the YouTube link, there is the Twitch stream link, which you don't need either one of those because you're here. But there's also a third link. That third link says choose a car. If you select choose a car, it will take you to this page. On this page, you will be able to scroll through and see all of the cars that are currently in the All About Aerodynamics At The Track Live fleet. And as I mentioned, we're up to 592, and there are all types of cars in here. There are fantasy cars. There are, like, for example, the Street Wiener, the hot dog themed car with the little spatula. It's got a grill in the back, but we've got that one, if that's the one you want to choose. If you think that car is going to be faster than one of the cars that we have currently pulled out to introduce into the fleet, then all you have to do is find the car. You can click on it to see a close-up picture. The cars are sitting on mirrors, so you can actually see in the reflection whether it's a plastic body on a metal base or a metal base on a plastic body, or a metal body and a metal base. Then all you have to do is take the number that's in front of the car and drop that into the chat. I will pull that car, and once I pull that car, we will take it to the track and see if the car that you've selected is faster than one of the new cars that I've introduced. Now, last week we had a couple of people who had cars that they picked that they wanted to see go up against the cars that I was pulling, and we did that, and neither of those cars was able to defeat the Solar Reflex, and the Solar Reflex went on to the championship and ended up defeating that BMW. So all you have to do is just look through and find the car that you think is going to be faster, and once you select it, I'll pull it and then we'll race it. So that is what's happening. And when we race the cars, it is, I always point out that with At The Track Live and All About Aerodynamics, a drag race, but it's different because most of the time when you see Hot Wheels drag racing online, it is gravity track. And with the gravity track, cars start from a high position and then they're released from a gate and they start to come down. And basically gravity pulls the cars down, and they go down the track and cross the finish line. And there's nothing wrong with that, but with All About Aerodynamics, because I want the students to be able to observe some of these principles in effect, I needed to make the cars go faster, because the faster the cars go, the more impact the air has on the car. And you can observe certain things happening. For example, Isaac Newton's third law of motion: for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. When the cars come out of the launching block, if they are not lined up straight, they will hit the side of the track. And once they hit the side of the track, the equal and opposite reaction, they will bounce back to the other side. And once they hit that side, they will bounce back to the other side. And it creates this back and forth motion that you can actually observe. And it's easier to observe when the cars are moving faster, because it's going to happen for a longer period of time versus if the cars were moving slowly. And also, you can see sometimes, so with the gravity tracks, heavier cars tend to do well and better. And I've seen some of the older cars, for example, the Murata Stalker, which is one of the first two cars that I ever had. This Murata Stalker, and also this Fairmont. These two cars, which you can see metal on metal, and they've got the gold Hot Ones wheels, whatever. These cars do very well on gravity tracks, but on our track, they don't do well at all because they're too heavy. And with the heavier cars, you can start to see, as they get toward the far end of the track, you can see them actually start to slow down. And it's an interesting thing to be able to observe, and the students are able to actually see that, which they wouldn't be able to do necessarily on a gravity track because the cars are moving too slowly. Now, I don't have anything against gravity tracks. In fact, I have a 6-lane, the 6-lane gravity track, and I bring that into the class because there's one of the experiments and lessons that we do where we need the gravity track. But generally speaking, we are going with our track. And so it's got a custom launcher that fires the cars out at really high speeds. And it makes for some pretty exciting races and some pretty exciting crashes. And I wanted to, there's a lesson that I do with the students where I use the Hot Wheels speedometer, which I've shown before. And essentially, the cars pass through, and then a number comes up, and it's usually in the hundreds. And the idea is that because of scale, the cars are 1/64th scale, that you should be able to divide that number that comes up on the Hot Wheels speedometer and by 64 and get the actual speed that the car is moving. The problem is that the number isn't necessarily, it's not the way that the Hot Wheels speedometer measures the speed is not really accurate, because essentially when the front wheels pass the sensor, it sends a signal to the speedometer, and then when the rear wheels pass, then another signal comes, and then you get a number. And I don't want to go into the whole thing, but there's a number of problems with that. So the speed wasn't necessarily accurate, but the idea and the principle was fine, because the students still would be dividing by 64 to get a smaller number to get the actual speed. So they learned about scale, but it always kind of bothered me that the that the speed wasn't necessarily accurate. So I had to deal with that, and until I found some other solutions. And one solution was this device that I've mentioned and talked about before from an organization called Cook's Projects. And so this actually has sensors, multiple sensors throughout. And once you plug it in, you set it up on the track, the cars pass through, and you get all kinds of information, the speed, and there's just a number of pieces of information and data that's collected by this that you can then use to make other determinations about the I believe you can do something with the kinetic energy, and there's a whole range of things. Problem is that I've run into is that these sensors, as I mentioned right here, they stick out too far, and essentially when the cars pass through, if the car is not passing through at exactly the right angle, it will bump into these sensors. And as fast as these cars are going on our track, they will break these sensors, and I don't want that to happen. So I've contacted the creator, and he was telling me to basically see if I could just push these back. And so this one I was able to push back. Some of these others have been a little more stiff, and I haven't been able to push them back. So I'm going to have to take this apart and adjust these sensors back so that they're more flush with the body. And then that way, I don't have to worry about the cars coming through, hitting the sensors and breaking it. Because even this car, like, it would have to go through perfectly with just millimeters to spare in order not to hit these sensors. And this was pretty expensive, so I don't want to have the sensors broken off like that, so I will have to do that. And then this will allow me to get accurate speed numbers, which is great. That's what I want. But in the meantime, until I do that, I had to come up with another solution, which involved a radar gun. So what I did is I bought a radar gun, and I just built, let me show you, a little stand for the radar gun. You can see it here. I'm putting it together using some electrical conduit and maker pipe connectors. And there's the radar gun, a little bit of Velcro on the back, and attached it to the pipe. And essentially, it sits over the track, and if I put it at the right angle and at the right height, it will track the speed of the cars. So I was looking at an Instagram account for a group that does Hot Wheels racing, and they were saying, oh, we have cars that scale speeds up to 200 miles an hour. And so again, if you do the math and the division, that basically means about 3 miles an hour in real speed. So the scale speed on that gravity track is approximately 200 miles an hour, which, sure, that's fine, that's fast. But as I mentioned, it's not fast enough for us. So the launcher that I created shoots the cars out a little faster. So when I got this radar gun all set up, then I was able to, I'll show you here how it works. So we have the cars set up, the radar gun's down there, and boom. So that car went through, and it was clocked in at 9 miles per hour. And let's take another look. Launcher, bang, and at 9 miles per hour, multiplying by 64 for the scale, that's 576 miles per hour versus the 3 miles per hour or the 200 miles per hour that the Gravity Track people were getting, the speeds they were reaching. And so in doing the test, cars were consistently coming in at 9 miles per hour, 8 miles per hour, 10 miles an hour, 11. Even had one, check it out here. Check this one out. 14 miles an hour. So we're talking about our cars are moving 4 times faster than in this case than they are on the Gravity Track. At least 3 times faster on average. And we have a video on our website where I test a Gravity Track versus our launcher, and the launcher that I'm using in that video isn't even the launcher that I use now. It is, and it's the actual older Mattel launcher. It's not the custom launcher. Custom launcher is a beast, and as you can see, fires the cars out. Let's take a look one more time at this one. And that's what we're getting, 14 miles an hour. So the cars are definitely coming out at higher rates of speed, which again make for exciting races and spectacular crashes, and a lot of cars don't make it. And it really depends, because the students have picked a lot of these cars, but it's not always, they don't all stay on the track. And there's some that I know will not stay on the track. But I don't tell the students that. I let them pick and observe and then come to their own conclusions, make their own observations. But hopefully today, all the cars that we introduce will stay on the track, and those 6 cars are going to be, let's start with, so the first one, I opened it a while back, and I'm not sure why it never got introduced into the fleet, but I'm going to correct that mistake. And let me just check the year, 2012. This is one of the great character cars that they've made, just based on how well they translated the look of the character into the car. This is the Squidward car, the SpongeBob Squidward car. And if you have seen the character, as this thing turns around, you see the face of the character. You see him right there. There is Squidward coming around, and let me get this video up. This is car number 593. This is Squidward, SpongeBob, and this, what did I say, 2012? I'll double check that. But these character cars, I like, because it's always interesting to see how the artists interpret the character and translate that character into a car, and all the little features and details they add in. But for me, it's really that, especially the front on look. But if you look from the side, you can see the character. It's right there, and it doesn't look forced. It actually lends itself in a great way to making this car look as good as it does. And I'm not sure how fast it will be, but it's definitely a great car. And I don't know, I'm still not sure why I hadn't previously put it into the fleet, since it was cracked open, which usually means once I crack a car open, it's usually going into the fleet. So, all right, we got the video. Now we just need to take a still picture here. And let's zoom on in. And that looks pretty good. Lock in the focus. And let me turn it just a little. And boom. All right, so Squidward is the first car to be introduced into the fleet. And the next car up, let's see, will be the, we'll go with this one, this lowrider. It is a, you're not going to be able to see it because of the green screen. Kind of can see it, but not up here. All this is green, which you'll see in a moment. Let me crack this open, and we can take a closer look. All right, 65 Pontiac Bonneville is what we are about to take a look at. So let's go here and see this car up close. Get this adjusted. There we go. And let's see. We'll go with take a closer view. And the lowrider, you'll see when it starts to come around on the video, you'll see, you can kind of tell here just how low the back end is, and just trying to get it lined up. Get this shot right there. Pretty good. I like the color on that. Nice. So we have our still picture. And as it comes around, we'll take the video. So with this one, I'm not quite sure how it's going to perform on the track. This is car number 594. I'm trying to think if we've had any lowriders that have done well. Pontiac 65 Pontiac Bonneville. Okay, got that in, and I still need to check the year. So this is definitely, it's a longer car. The wheels are not flush with the body, and that's one of the things that I particularly am not a fan of. I like the wheels to be flush with the body, but in this case I understand because this is modeled after the actual car, and the wheels were apparently, unless this is strictly a customized, or a version of a customized 65 Bonneville. I'm not sure if in the back the wheels actually were covered like this, or if this is just something, a modification that was made in the lowrider interpretation of this car. But either way, I'm not a fan of the wheels being tucked in like that, and it's not too severe. It's not. I've seen worse, but it's just, I don't know. These a really long car with the wheels that close together, tucked under the body. I don't know, but it's why we race the cars. We have to go out and see how they actually perform on the track. Looking for a year on this, 2002. So I will put that into the spreadsheet. We have two cars introduced. We have the Squidward, and we have the 65 Pontiac Bonneville. So we've got those two. Now we are going to, we had a period of time where it was just Batmobile after Batmobile after Batmobile, and there was a Batmobile that I was introducing that I wasn't sure if it was going to fit on the track. So because I wasn't sure if it was going to fit on the track, I had a backup Batmobile. Turns out that other Batmobile did fit on the track, so I never got to the backup. Today, the backup is getting cracked open, and it's going to be entered into the fleet. So let's take a look. It is the classic TV series Batmobile, except it's like a miniature version. And somewhere, if you go to AtTheTrack.live and you click on choose a car and you go through that entire listing of cars, there are a bunch of Batmobiles in there, but there's the Batmobile from the old TV series, and it's the full-size version. This is a miniature version. We're going to see how this performs on the track, but first let's take a closer look. Okay. Now this is interesting because this one has a little weight to it, which is interesting, especially for a smaller car. Let's take a closer look. And what you can see is that this is very compact. It's probably, if it's not the shortest car or smallest car, it's definitely one of them. So let me go ahead and just take the still picture first. Zoom in a bit. And for some reason, I think this car might do well. Usually, there are kind of extremes, and you don't want a car that's too light, and you don't want a car that's too heavy. There is a kind of sweet spot, but what we have found is that smaller cars, if the weight is right, do pretty well. And this one, surprisingly, has a little bit of weight to it. The body is all metal, and I'll check in a second and see if the base is also metal, because that would account for the weight. But lock in the focus. Okay, so we've got the classic TV series Batmobile. I'll call this one Mini because I'm sure the other one has the exact same name. Classic TV series Batmobile. Mini. And I will check the year on this, but it looks, can't tell. I'll have to pick it up. But even if the base is plastic, the fact that the body is metal is probably, I mean, what's giving it the weight. But I wouldn't. I think this might be a sleeper car, and we saw the ultimate sleeper car, which was the Dogfighter, a few weeks ago, and that car, there was no way I thought that car would do anything on the track, and sure enough, it was one of the fastest cars that we've had on the track, and it almost beat the BMW, which was the champion at the time. All right, got the video. So I'm curious to see how much this car weighs. So it is metal. It's a metal body on a plastic base, and the car weighs 34.5 grams, which check the other two. And the Squidward car weighs 37.8. And see, the Bonneville The Bonneville is 38. So the Batmobile is, at this point, the lightest. And the Solar Reflex, our champion, is 35.5. So the Batmobile is smaller and lighter. And it is the third car to be entered in to the fleet today. So we have the Squidward car, we have the mini Batmobile, and we have the 65 Pontiac Bonneville in this Batmobile 2021. So let's see, 2021. All right. And now, next up, let's go with so I do need to check, because there were a few cars that I pulled, and I pulled multiple cars because I was not sure if I had them in there already. So I'm checking to see whether or not I have this one in there, and it is a 2015 Jaguar F-Type Project 7. I do not have that in there, so therefore it can become part of the fleet. So here we go. This is the Jaguar, the 2015 Jaguar F-Type Project 7 car. So let's crack this open, take a closer look. Okay, let's take a look at this one. Make sure the focus is locked in. Good. And shoot this video. So we've got the convertible Jaguar F-Type Project 7. And this car, now we have had convertibles do pretty well. There doesn't seem to be really much that, depending on how they're designed. Well, actually, with the Batmobile, that's basically a kind of convertible. It's got an open kind of driver passenger canopy area. So I think this car, I don't know if any of these cars are going to be able to challenge the Solar Reflex, but you never know until you actually get them on the track. And but this car, just looking at it, with the wheels, the stance, the body shape and design, I think this car will do well. And it is going to be car number 597. It is the 15 Jaguar F-Type Project 7. Okay, and then let's go ahead and get the still picture. Zoom in a bit. I will say this, that based on the races that the cars that the students have picked and the races that have been held, there is a Jaguar in the fleet that is very fast. And I'm not going to tell you which one, but I'm just going to leave it at that. There is a Jaguar that in the fleet that is very fast. So if you want to go to AtTheTrack.live, select choose a car, go to that page, scroll through. One of those 592 cars that is listed is a Jaguar and is very, very fast. Is it faster than the Solar Reflex? I do not know because they haven't raced, but it's fast. I'll leave it at that. Okay, and I always want to get try and get a good 3/4 view so that the students who participate online will be able to actually make a determination about the body style and type of car. So here we have that. Let me check so the year is 2015. 2015, I will enter that here. And now we have 4 cars. We have the 65 Pontiac Bonneville, we have the Squidward car, we have the Batmobile, and we have the Jaguar F-Type Project 7. Now, the 5th car that we are going to introduce is one that I picked up at the Hot Wheels swap meet out in Pasadena, which if you're in Southern California, you should follow Diecast Support Group on Instagram, and they will have a calendar that shows the 2 Hot Wheels swap meet meetups every month that happen in Pasadena at the Arroyo Seco Park. And I usually try to go out there once a month or every other month and find cars, pick up cars, and usually everybody's great, especially if you're into the more exclusive cars and the collector cars and premium cars and special editions. These guys who are out there have all that stuff. And I'm not really into that because I like the mainline cars, which are the cars that you can purchase in the stores, because most of the premium cars have rubber tires. And as I've said before, the rubber tires do not work out on our track. They slow the cars down. There's way too much friction. Cars are slow, and it just doesn't. They can't win. They cannot win on our track. There's no car with rubber wheels that is going to win or even come close to winning on our track. So, and the fact that those cars cost more money is good for me because I don't want the premium cars. I want the cars that you can pick up off the shelf, and I don't do any modifications to the cars. No graphite on the axles, none of that stuff. I pull the cars out of the package, and how they perform is how they perform. So we have another car that I picked up at the Pasadena Hot Wheels swap meet, and it is this one. It is the Tooned Deora. So this is a tuned version of one of the classic Hot Wheels cars, one of the original Hot Wheels cars, I believe. And we will crack this one open and see what we've got here. Okay, so let's get this up here. And this is another pretty compact, pretty small car that is the way that I think that the Batmobile will do well, being a smaller, more compact car. I don't think this one will do well. And part of that has to do with, again, the way the wheels are set under, they're not flush with the body. And I just don't think that gives the car enough control to do well on our track. I have a feeling that this car will either, if it doesn't crash, I think it's going to bounce around a lot. But I could be wrong. I don't think so. So let's go ahead and get the still picture of the Tooned Deora. I think that's good. Right there. And now, of course, let's get the video. And as it comes around, you can take a look. And I'm trying to think if any cars have done well that have had the wheels tucked underneath the body. And you can see right there, look at that gap for the front wheel, how far in the wheels actually are. And yeah, I'm not too optimistic about this car's chances, but again, you never know until you take them to the track. So we've got the Tooned Deora, and I didn't check the year yet, but this will be our 5th car. And as it comes around, I'm just going to double check on for the 6th car. I want to make sure that I don't already have Lotus Sport. Let's see. It's either going to be a Lotus or a fantasy car. Let's see, the Lotus Sport. No, I don't see it in there. So, okay, we're good to go with that. We got the Deora, we got the Tooned Deora, and now we are going to take a look at the 6th car after I check the year on this Deora. The year is 2003, and let's just see what the weight is on this car. 35.7, so it's not significantly heavier than any of the other cars, but it is definitely, it's compact like the Batmobile, but I just don't think that wheelbase is going to help it at all. 2003. Just double check. Yeah. All right, so we've got one more car to go. We have the Pontiac Bonneville, the 65 Pontiac Bonneville. We have the Squidward car. We have the the mini Batmobile. We have the Jaguar F-Type Project 7, and we have the Deora, which is the tuned, squished down cartoon version of the actual Deora. And our 6th and final car for today is going to be this one. It is the Lotus Sport Elise, and this car is I had to check because I know there are a number of other Lotuses in the fleet already, and those tend to be popular. So Lamborghinis, I think there's a couple of Ferraris, but Lamborghinis, Lotuses, because of the shape, tend to attract the students' attention, and they pick those kind of frequently. So I knew there were Lotuses, but we don't have any Lotus Sport Elises. So let's crack this open and take a look. Okay, and this 2003 also. So let me move that Deora, and we can take a look at the Lotus Esprit, or Lotus Sport Elise. Just turned around here. Shoot the video first. And I think this is more of a car that we would sort of traditionally expect to do well. So it's got a metal body, and it has a nice. It's not too big. It's not very big, but also I like the fact that the rear end of the car is more or less flat, which means it will press up very nicely against the launching block, so it should get a good solid push from the launcher. Let's see, this is car number 599, and this is the Lotus Sport Elise. Yeah, I think this car, of the cars that are going today, I think between this car and the Jaguar, I think those will be the two that will probably emerge. However, I'm really curious to see what that Batmobile does. I think that's, of all the cars today, that Batmobile is likely to be the sleeper, and it could surprise us. It could surprise us, and that's part of the excitement of actually taking these cars to the track, is that you really don't know until they actually race. You can have your hypothesis, you can make an educated guess based on everything that you've observed, and I've observed a lot of races. And there are certain types of cars that do better on our track than others, and I wouldn't just divulge what those which cars those are and what to look for, but if you watch enough races, you can start to see trends and which cars perform better, and that's part of what I want the students to do. And that's why I have them keep records, and we track the statistics on how the cars perform. Because after one or two races, you can't make any definitive conclusions. But each student, as they make their observations and their data go into a database, and it contributes to the overall picture. So after I go to multiple schools and hundreds of students, then we can start to look at the data, and we can start to see trends. Which cars do better? Which cars do worse? And it starts to become clear that there are certain types of cars that do better than others on our track. But for now, we are going to see which of these cars does better on our track. And let me check the year on this. Oh, I already did. 2003. 2003, so we have two 2003 cars. And let's see, we have our fleet. Let me see what this Lotus weighs. 34.1 grams. So we've got that one it's right in line with all the others. So we don't really have, I think the heaviest car that we had was the Bonneville, maybe, or the Squidward car. Yeah, the Bonneville's coming in at 38 grams. So we will see how that car performs. But we have our 6 for today. We have our 6 cars that are going to be racing. We are going to find out which of these cars is fastest, and then that car will take on the Solar Reflex, our fastest in fleet car. And so we currently have the Squidward car. We have the 65 Pontiac Bonneville. We have the classic TV series mini Batmobile. We have the Jaguar Project, what was it called? The F-Type Project 7, the Tooned Deora, and the Lotus Sport Elise. So we are up to 599 cars. And what we're going to do is head over to the track and see which of these cars is actually the fastest. Now, before we go to the track, I'm just going to explain once again what you'll be seeing once we get to the track. And when we get to the track, it will look like this. You will see a 3-camera view. That 3-camera view begins on the left side. At the top of the left side view, you will see our launcher. And I will give a countdown, 3, 2, 1, race. And then the cars will come flying out of the launcher, and they will head towards the bottom of the first screen on the left. After they pass out of the bottom of the first screen on the left, you can pick them up at the top of the screen in the middle. The cars will come flying down through the middle section of our track. The cars will come from the top down to the bottom. Once they pass out of the bottom of the middle section, then you can pick them up on our finish line camera, which is on the far right, and the cars will start at the top of the screen. They'll come flying down and they will cross the finish line. Once they cross the finish line, there are two indicator lights, and the car that crosses the finish line first will be indicated by a solid red light. A solid red light indicates the winning car, and a flashing red light indicates the losing car. It's pretty simple. And that is what we will do. The races are best 2 out of 3, and the cars switch lanes after each race, so there's no competitive advantage by being in one lane versus the other. Both cars will have an opportunity in either lane, and then we will continue until we have our winner, and that winner will then take on the Solar Reflex to see which car is going to leave today as the fastest in fleet car. So with that, I am going to gather up the cars, and I will see you in a few seconds over at the track. Okay, now I just need to double check, make sure all of the sound levels are where they need to be, and looks like we're good on that side. So we are all ready to check out and find out which car is going to be today's champion. So let's go ahead and start with the two biggest cars that we had today, and we'll go with the Squidward car versus the 65 Pontiac Bonneville. So those will be the first two cars up, and went in, and today's races should be pretty fast because I made some couple little modifications to the launcher, and we're getting some fast times, at least in the test races we did getting ready for today's episode. So the Squidward car is going to be in lane number 1. We've got the Bonneville in lane number 2. Okay, so both those cars are lined up. This is going to be best 2 out of 3. This is the first race, and the car that crosses first will be indicated by a solid red light. So let's see what happens. Three, 2, 1, race. Woo. So the Bonneville tried to hang on, but it crashed. And what happened was what I anticipated would happen. What happens a lot with cars with the narrow wheelbase is it started bouncing around back and forth on the track, and you could see it just sort of bouncing back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, until eventually it bounced completely off the track toward the tail end. So all about aerodynamics at the track live. Our rules state that if a car crashes once, we simply redo the race. no problem. We restart it, but if a car crashes twice consecutively, then that car is eliminated, because a car that crashes twice consecutively in the same place, in the same way, there's most likely a problem with the car, and racing it multiple times isn't going to change the fundamental problem. So car crashes twice, it is eliminated. And let's get this car lined up. Okay, so if the Bonneville crashes again, it's out. Doesn't appear that it's going to be able to be faster than the Squidward car anyway, but we still got to race the cars. So Bonneville's in lane 2, Squidward car's in lane 1. Let's see what happens. Three, two, one, race. Okay, and the Bonneville, again, it bounced around the track quite a bit, but it still, at least this time, it stayed on the track. So I've got to give it credit for that, but it still lost the race, and it is down 1-0. The cars will change lanes, and then we will see if the Bonneville can perhaps pull off it wouldn't be a miracle, but it would be just shy of a miracle if it can take the race. But I don't see that happening, just because the way that it fishtails and bounces around the track, every time it brushes up and bangs into the side of the track, that's just more friction slowing the car down. So that's not going to be beneficial in any way, but we've got to race the cars. And so Squidward is now in lane 2, and the Bonneville, if I can get it to stay put, will be in lane number 1. Come on, Bonneville, because I've got to get these cars pressed right up against the launching block. Otherwise, they will not do well. All right. Okay, so we've got the Bonneville in lane 1. We've got Squidward car in lane 2. Let's see what happens. Still having problems with the Bonneville. Still having problems. So still having some problems with the Bonneville, just getting it to stay put in the launcher. It rolls forward just slightly, and the problem if a car rolls forward is that the launcher it's not going to push the car, it's going to punch the car. And if it punches the car is likely to fly up into the air as opposed to getting pushed out of the launcher and onto the track. So now, okay, now we've got them lined up. Bonneville lane 1, Squidward lane 2. This is the race to determine whether or not Squidward moves on, or whether or not we need to have a third and final race between these two. So let's see what happens. Three, two, one, race. And Squidward destroyed the Bonneville once again, so that is that the Bonneville will be entered into the fleet, and it will be available to be chosen by a student in the future. However, if that student happens to be watching this episode, either live or later on our YouTube channel, they will know the Bonneville is not such a good pick. Squidward, maybe. Who knows? All right, let's go with the Deora and the Lotus. Now, as I mentioned before, the Deora has that very narrow wheelbase, and I'm not a fan of, but it is what it is. So, the Deora is going to be in lane number 1. I'm sorry, in lane number 2. And the Lotus will be in lane number 1. And we will see which of these cars moves on with Squidward. So here we go. Race number 1, Lotus lane 1, and Deora lane 2. Three, two, one, race. And once again, the car with the narrow wheelbase sort of bounced around the track and lost by a lot, which is entirely predictable. In fact, I predicted it. So, we will switch sides of the track, let these cars race again, because it is best 2 out of 3, and sometimes there's days when cars do better out of a particular lane, but in this case, these cars are nowhere near the same level in terms of their speed and their ability to complete the course. So, the Deora will be in lane number 1, the Lotus in lane number 2, and this is race number 2. If the Lotus takes it, Lotus moves on. If the Deora takes it, we will have a third race. So here we go. Three, two, one, race. Ooh. Okay, that race was closer, but the Deora still lost. So, the Deora is not all bad if it can stay on the track. I think that the Deora is fast enough to beat some cars. Just not, it's not in that upper tier of cars that we've seen on this track. So, the Deora will join the Bonneville, and the Lotus will join Squidward as one of the cars that has moved on. So now we're down to the last 2 for today, which is the mini Batmobile and the Jaguar F-Type. So this is definitely going to be interesting because I really am curious to see how this Batmobile performs. So we will set these cars up in the launcher and find out how this is going to play out. All right, we've gonna have the Batmobile in lane number 1, and I have a feeling this is either gonna be one extreme or the other. I don't expect anything in the middle with this Batmobile. I think it's either gonna be really fast or it's gonna crash. So, all right. So we've got the Jaguar in lane 2. We've got the Batmobile, the mini Batmobile in lane 1. Let's see what happens. Three, two, one, race. Okay, that Jaguar was fast, and I think during the during the reviews, I mentioned that looked sort of like a car that was traditionally pretty fast, along with that other Jaguar that I mentioned. So the Jaguar took that one pretty easily. The Batmobile did complete the race, but it's hard to tell if the Jaguar is just that fast or if the Batmobile was running slowly. So either way, there is going to be a second race, and so some of these questions may actually get answered. I'm going to line these things up again, get the Batmobile, this time in lane number 2, and get the Jaguar in lane number 1. Okay, both the cars are lined up, and let's see what happens. Three, two, one, race. Okay, that Jaguar is fast, and the Solar Reflex might need to start sweating just a little bit, because that Jaguar was moving. And yes, the Batmobile may have been slow and slower than expected, but that Jaguar was fast. So let's go ahead and put Batmobile over with the Deora and the Bonneville. And now we're down to 3. So let's get Squidward and actually, we'll just go, because they're kind of similar. We'll go Squidward and the Lotus. That's what we'll do. These cars lined up. And see which one will eventually take on the Jaguar. So we've got Squidward in lane 1, the Lotus in lane number 2. Let's see what happens. Race number 1. Three, two, one, race. Squidward takes it. That race was close enough, but Squidward stayed out in front and took the race. We will now move on to race number 2, and the cars will switch lanes, and we'll see whether or not the Lotus can make a comeback. All right, let's see here. We have the Squidward car, which is one of the best character cars I've seen, versus the Lotus, which is going to need to pull something out. A lot more speed than it showed in that first race. Squidward lined up. All right, so we got Squidward in lane 2, Lotus in lane 1. Lotus is down 1 race to none, so it needs to win this race in order to move on. Here we go. Three, two, one, race. Okay, so the Lotus took race number 2, and so now it was close. I thought Squidward might catch it at the end, but nope, Lotus took it. So now we are talking about one final race to see which of these cars moves on to the finals against the Jaguar. So cars will switch lanes once again. And we will have to see which car can get the job done. We have Squidward in. Squidward will be in lane number 1. And the Lotus Sport Elise will be in lane number 2. All right. Cars are lined up. It's one race to one race. Whichever car takes it moves on to face the Jaguar in the finals. Let's see what happens. Three, two, one, race. Oh. Squidward pulls it out. That was a very close race. Very close indeed. But Squidward pulled out the victory and will be moving on against the Jaguar to find out who is today's AtTheTrack.live tournament champion. And then that car will move on to face the Solar Reflex, our new champion. So let's see what's going on here. We will have Squidward lining up in lane number 2. Let's see. So Squidward in lane number 2. And the Jaguar in lane number 1. All right, so here we go. This is the finals for today. We've got Squidward in lane number 2. We've got the Jaguar in lane number 1. Let's see what happens. Three, two, one, race. Jaguar takes it. It was not necessarily all that close, but the Jaguar took it. And we will switch sides, see if Squidward can make up that difference. But it's going to be a tall order because, again, that Jaguar is fast. And the Solar Reflex beat out that BMW, which we know was fast. So the Solar Reflex is fast, but this Jaguar is looking particularly fast. But it's not over yet. It's just one race to none. We are going to switch sides of the track. Actually, no. Let me see. Put Squidward in lane 1. And the Jaguar in lane number 2. Okay, so the Jaguar's in lane 2, Squidward's in lane 1. The Jaguar's up, one race to none. Let's see what happens. Three, two, one, race. Squidward pulls it out. So now we have one race to one race. The race was pretty close. And now we're going to go to the final matchup. That's what I like. I like when it comes down to the third and final race. So both these cars are pretty fast. Squidward is surprisingly fast. The Jaguar, it's not so much of a surprise, just based on other cars that tend to do well. But it's coming down to the third and final race. We are going to switch sides. It is going to be Squidward in lane number 2. It is going to be the Jaguar in lane number 1. this is it. This is to see which car is going to be today's champion and which car is going to take on the Solar Reflex. So here we go, third and final race. Three, two, one, race. Oh. It was close. It was very close, but the Jaguar took the race and is today's champion and will now move on to face the fastest in fleet car. That is none other than the Solar Reflex, and that race is coming up right now. The Jaguar is a fast car, but again, the Squidward's surprisingly fast, and I think some students will be surprised because they will pick the Squidward car because they like the character, because they're SpongeBob fans, and not necessarily because of the aerodynamic properties, which is the reason I throw the character cars in there, because I want to see if the students are going to choose with their heads or with their hearts. And it's very interesting, some of the cars they pick and some of the reasons they have for picking those cars, but nevertheless, this is what's about to happen. We are going to have the Solar Reflex in lane number 2. We're going to have the Jaguar in lane number 1. So, this is the race to determine which car is the fastest in fleet car. We've got the Jaguar, today's champion, in lane number 1. We've got the Solar Reflex, the current fastest in fleet car, in lane number 2. So let's see what happens. Three, two, one, race. And the Jaguar proceeded to crash, so we will restart that race. And once again, we have a rule here that if a car crashes twice consecutively, that car is eliminated. The Jaguar, we know it's fast, we know it can make it down the track, so I'm not worried that there's some problem with the car. But let me go get the Solar Reflex, which made it down the track with ease. So we will come back and get this car lined up. So again, the Jaguar, today's champ, was in lane 1. The Solar Reflex, the current fastest in fleet car, is in lane number 2. And there we go. We have them reset, and let's see what happens. Three, two, one, race. Solar Reflex with ease and distance. That was not close. The cars will switch lanes, and we will see if the Jaguar can step its game up. And this is interesting because we will see, again, the Jaguar looked fast against slow cars, but against a really fast car, that wasn't a good look right there. But it's not just one and done. It is best 2 out of 3. There's a reason for that. We've seen cars come back. Seen cars come back from being down to make extraordinary comebacks, and anything is possible. So we will put that there. We'll put this here. So we have the Jaguar In lane number 2, we have the Solar Reflex in lane number 1. This is to determine whether or not the Jaguar can compete to become the fastest in fleet car. If the Solar Reflex takes it out of lane 1, then the Solar Reflex remains the champion. Let's see what happens. Three, two, one, race. A little bit better by the Jaguar, but the Solar Reflex is so ridiculously fast and launched out with so much power and so much force. It hit the barricade and bounced all the way back nearly to the start line. I mean, it came back to the first third of the track. I think that's the first time we've had a car do that. But nevertheless, the Solar Reflex is the and remains the fastest in fleet car, the All About Aerodynamics at the Track Live champion. So let me gather these cars up, head back into the garage, and we'll take a final look at the winners and losers. So once again, the Solar Reflex for the second week in a row is the fastest in fleet car and will be challenged next week by a new set of cars, which will include the 600th car in the fleet. I think I'm gonna have to look through and really make a special pick of some sort for the 600th car. That's a pretty big milestone, and it really speaks to I don't know what it speaks to, but I know it's a lot of work because again, it's not that the work is hard, it's just that it's tedious. You have 600, you have to shoot 600 videos of each of these cars, you have to take 600 pictures, have to catalog them in the spreadsheet and then load them onto the website and make sure all the metadata is correct on there. So there is some work, so I'm taking some pride in reaching 600 cars uploaded and available for you to pick. And once again, now that you've seen the Solar Reflex in action, you know what it can do. You know how fast it is. You've seen what it looks like and the cars that it's beaten and how it's beaten them. If you think you can find a car that is faster than the Solar Reflex, all you have to do is go to AtTheTrack.live and select choose a car, and it will take you to this page. On this page, you will see all of the cars listed. And later this week, hopefully later this weekend, I will have included all of the latest cars that have been added to the fleet. And you can look through, and if you find one that you think is faster, maybe you think this Gangster Grin car is going to be faster. You just click on it. It will show you what the car looks like. And if you think that's the car that can beat the Solar Reflex, I think you're wrong. But It's not my choice. It's not my pick. It's your pick. You choose. You choose. We race. And if this is the car you think is the one, then next week all you have to do is in the chat, you just drop this number 276. I will pull the car and we will see if you are correct. Perhaps you think, oh, there was one from last week. We had someone select the Muscle Speeder, and the Muscle Speeder, it did okay, but it didn't do well enough to defeat either of the cars that was introduced, so it essentially was just a failed pick. But nevertheless, you never know. You never know until you take these cars to the track. And my students have not selected all of these cars. So there's a number of these cars that I've never seen actually race on the track. I don't think anyone has picked Straight Pipes. This one. It's available to be picked, but no one's picked it for some seemingly obvious reasons. But you never know. You never know. I would say that in this group of 590 cars, the odds are that there is a car that is faster than the Solar Reflex, but I haven't seen it. And unless you pick it, we'll never know. But there is a possibility that there is a sleeper car in this is the one, the Dogfighter. This one was wild. There is no way in looking at this that I would have ever thought that this car was going to be fast, that it was going to be competitive, that it was going to be arguably one of the best cars that we've seen on the track. But it was, and that's the whole point, is that until you're actually racing the cars, you really just never know. So that is that. But the current fastest in fleet, the current champion, the current car that would need to be beaten out is the Solar Reflex. And there it is. So you saw today that it destroyed the Jaguar. The second race was closer. It was closer, but it was not in any danger of being defeated or going down today. But that might change. You might be the person to pick the car that is in fact faster than the Solar Reflex. And if that's the case, then congratulations to you, because you will have done something that I haven't been able to do so far. But there will be 6 more cars next week that we will add into the fleet. We'll see if there is possibly one that can be faster than the Solar Reflex. And the only way to know is to take the cars to the track. And so, for All About Aerodynamics, for At The Track Live, I am Coach James. I would say this: you should follow us on Instagram at AA Aerodynamics, and you will find out when you'll actually be able to see previews of the cars that are going to be racing. So it gives you a little bit of time to know that, okay, these are the cars that are going to be racing. Let me pick a car that I think is faster than those cars, because you're not going to just pick a car and go up against the Solar Reflex. You have to beat out the other cars that are introduced. So you have to beat out those 6 cars. Then if you beat those 6 cars, then you get a shot at the title. But it all begins with picking a car. It all begins with knowing who the opposing cars are, because that might change your mind about which car you're going to pick. And the way to find all that out is to follow us at AA Aerodynamics. If you want to see any older episodes of At The Track Live, all you have to do is go to our YouTube page, and the link is in the bio. And all of the episodes are there. I mentioned there are time codes, so if you just want to watch the races, you can select that, go to the races. If you just want to watch the reviews, you can do that. If you want to watch the whole episode, more than welcome to do that also. So, With that, there's also a calendar at AtTheTrack.live, and that calendar will tell you when we are going to be up here, but it's pretty much every Saturday at 11 a.m. Pacific. There is a car hunt show that we do on Instagram Live. When I buy new cars and just want to do a quick review before I don't crack those open on Instagram. Just a quick look at what I've picked up. And if you do want to know a little bit more about the science program, which is all about aerodynamics, all you have to do is go to our website at AA Aerodynamics, or you can find the link in the Instagram bio or pretty much anywhere. And you can contact me to find out how to bring our science program to your students, to your school, to your organization, to your special event. And you can get in contact with me and I can give you more details. And believe me, the students will have fun and they will also learn something. Who would have thought? But that is that. Again, I am Coach James. This is At the Track Live. And until next time, I'll see you at the races.